Today, we have a very special episode of Woodworking is Bullshit. It's a live episode that we recorded in front of a studio audience at the Making It podcast's 500th episode celebration. They asked us to record a live episode along with them, and we featured our greatest hits. So, this is three questions that we think are particularly revealing, and we asked these questions to Jimmy Diresta, Derek from Malden, and Justine Silva, who have never been on the podcast before. And let me tell you, these questions cut deep because that's what we like to do. And I was very intrigued to hear the answers of the entire panel. I think each of them has a very unique perspective on creativity and what happens when the well runs dry, imposter syndrome, and perfectionism. Those are the three. I hope you enjoy this episode and feel free to leave comments down below.
Intro. This is Woodworking is Bullshit. I'm your host, Paul Jasper. I'm a scientist by day, woodworker by night for the last 20 years. And our show is not about how to make things. I think we have enough podcasts about how to do the thing. It's about why we do the thing. It's about the creative, emotional, mental, philosophical side of what it's like to be makers and artists. And we don't talk about this enough. How many times have you seen a video about how to cut a better dovetail or how to make something, right? How many times have you had a video come out in our space about what it's like to be lonely in your shop because you're alone all the time? And how do you deal with it? Have you seen a podcast or heard a video about creativity? And what do you do if you're in a rut? What do you do? And you have deadlines. Or do you feel like an imposter? Like you're supposed to be this big time maker or whatever you happen to be, or an artist, and you don't feel in your own head, like, they haven't figured it out yet, but I don't quite feel like I really know what I'm doing. And I think these are conversations I think all of us have had in our heads, but no one wants to talk about it except me and Eric. So we started this podcast with the goal of taking on the mental, creative, emotional, philosophical questions that we were dealing with all the time. And we just wanted to talk about it. And we thought, why don't we record it? Because maybe it'll help some people and it'll resonate with it. So that's what this podcast is about. It's not going to teach you how to make the thing, but we're going to explore why we make the thing. And so my three esteemed, distinguished colleagues up here have the opportunity to express how they deal with some of these questions. And we can go back and forth. And I'm going to ask the audience for participation in the form of raising your hand, because this is the vulnerable part of today, is where we all share the truth behind what it's like to be a maker. All right, so with that, today I'm bringing what I consider some of our greatest hits, meaning questions you think are just so good that so many of us can relate to. And I did give them a little prep beforehand so they knew what they were walking into. And so we'll start with the first question, and we'll go from there. So, question number one, whether you're a YouTube creator making videos, or whether you're a woodworker, or whatever you do, whatever you make, there comes these ebbs and flows to the creative cycle. Sometimes you're so hot to try, you can't wait to get in there and do the thing. You're literally insatiable, right? This inspiration is welling up inside you, and no one can keep you away. And then there's times where it's this is a grind. I'm on video. How many YouTube videos do you have?
About 900, maybe more.
So, I'm sure, and you're going to answer first, I'm sure we've all gone through when you're just not feeling it. And you feel like, I've gone cold. I don't know, I'm not feeling it. I don't feel like I have much to say.
You run out of ideas.
You run out of ideas.
The fans always seem to notice that before me.
Or if you were to living at this, you have to do creativity on demand. You have deadlines. You have to do the thing. And you're not feeling the thing. So the question, and by the way, how many people relate to this? Raise your hand.
Everybody's raising.
Okay, great. So Jimmy, obviously 950, that's a lot. How do you deal with, especially when you get the ebb?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. I'm never at a loss for an idea. I'm usually at a loss for a quality idea. And so there's always things, I'll always have something. Whether I'm 100% proud of it or 50% proud of it, That's where I feel the ebb and flow. It's like I promised I'm going to do video for a client, meeting an advertiser, and I might not love the idea, but I'm obligated, the date's coming up, and I have to do it. I'm not 100%, and sometimes when I'm not 100% into the idea that I'm about to execute, I always remind myself there's always drama in the process. There'll always be something that I'll be able to highlight. So a lot of times I find the gems in the process and not the finished piece. So you get to the finish line, you're like, that's okay, but I really loved when you applied this process. Or I really got the joy out of, and that's what I get out of the fans. And also me, so I'm always looking for like that interesting sequence of video editing. So there'll always be something within it that gives me the rush that I'm looking for as an artist, the fulfillment of, I did a good job because I did this part in Act 1, even though the finish wasn't really what I hoped for.
I think at a 10,000 foot view, if you don't enjoy the process, you're probably not going to make it as a maker, because you're in the process 99.9% of the time.
I do everything. I do the editing, and social media, do it all.
The process is what we have the most of, so you have to find the enjoyment during that. I do the same way. That like the finished product is great and all, but I'm over it by the time I finished it. I'm literally waiting to get the next idea out.
Yeah, a lot of times when I come to that ebb and flow and it's ebbed, there's nothing next. I have to look within myself and be like, okay, I really do ask myself this question. I would say, what have I been avoiding? What is the project I've been avoiding? There's always something that I don't want to do because it's either I feel like I'm not technically skilled enough to do it, or it's an expensive process, or it's the lathe is covered with crap and I don't want to uncover the lathe to make 12 porch balls. Like there's that. I'm like, that part of the room, and Raul's gonna laugh, that part of the room is a disaster. There's a car parked in front of it. I haven't turned that lathe on since.
Like you were saying earlier, how quickly you cleaned up the shot in 45 minutes.
That was with 45 people. Austin Ellers, where are you? You're in here somewhere. He helped me clean up the other day. Thank you very much. In that, I was able to get to the process of making those porch calls. But therein lies a lot of those. What is the hurdle? What is the block? And I say it on the podcast all the time. What is that thing that's keeping me from doing this? So when I ebb and flow, and I'm not necessarily out of ideas, I'm out of ideas that I want to jump on. I'm like, okay, what is the idea I'm avoiding? And why am I avoiding it? I'm avoiding the lathe because I'm afraid. I didn't even measure. Austin will laugh because I sent a picture of Lana. They're like, they fit. I knew how long I needed it to be, and I never measured the lathe. So I was expecting to go to the lathe and be like, the lathe's too short, I'll do a different project.
I think it's fairly unusual that someone is self-insightful to the point that they acknowledge, number one, that they realize they're avoiding.
Always.
That's unusual. And second, to take themselves to task and push headfirst towards it.
Yeah,
that's very unusual, just so you know. I don't think that's very typical.
Been at it for a while.
But you're very typical. So, all right, Justine, what do you think? How do you deal with ebb and flow?
Well, I'm thinking about this meme that I'm sure you guys have all seen, and it's a graph of the creative process, and it like starts at the top, and it's like, this is awesome, this is awesome, this is awesome, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, like, it's awful, then it comes back around. And so like I always try to just stay grounded. Every project's gonna have those moments. And sometimes they're like hiding in things. It's the worst when they're the moments that it's like, this actually should be easy. Like gluing these two things should be easy, but they don't stick together for some reason. And so, I don't know, I think just staying grounded and knowing that it'll come back around and knowing that you just have to stand by what you make is sort of where I stand or I come from.
How do you force yourself to come in and work on things that you're just totally not feeling?
Well, I guess my perspective is a little different because I make a lot of stuff for clients. So it's not necessarily my project, although I do have to own it. So some of the stuff that I make, I'm really not feeling most of the time, but I can't say that out loud. And so sometimes I'll just come at it from like, you are just putting lipstick on a pig. Like that's what you're doing right now. And it's in its pig stage and we will bring it back around.
Sorry, your project isn't pig. You go ahead, client is. I don't want to tell you this.
Well, I'll give you an example.
Please.
Well, like I was thinking about this when we were talking about those the cat holes. Yeah. That cat, your cat, had seen better days at one point. And I remember the director turning to me and being like, Justine, you gotta fix this cat, it's deranged. It's like, I know it's deranged. I can't speak for the way it works and the way it fires.
That's my fault.
It was your fault. And, but I think that like that was at that point in the process of like, this sucks, we're never gonna get it back out. But knowing like, okay, no, this is salvageable, we can do it, knowing that I guess it's believing in yourself and your abilities, by the end it will come back around. And then the next time you have to make a catapult, a giant catapult for TV, you will know.
It's easy. So your principal. So Derek, you and I have recently spoken about seasonal affective disorder this winter. I know both of us love it. We were having a phone call and he's like, yeah, dude, I just not feeling it lately. I haven't been in my shop in 3 weeks. I've been in Dunkin' the whole time. And, no, but he was really down in dumps for a time creatively, and he didn't want to get in the shop. And he's like wondering. I relate. I feel that every winter. It's tough sometimes. You're just not feeling it. So Derek, what was your trajectory like pulling out of the winter blues, so to speak?
So the way I deal with it, unfortunately, for my wife, is complaining to her nonstop. She's a city, and this lady will listen to anything. And, truthfully, she knows when I come up those basement stairs that there's some tragedy going on down there. But this past fall, it was tough. I have a torn hamstring, and, I don't want to say much about it because then you get a million people with advice and stuff like that. So going up and down the stairs, we had a family friend die suddenly young, and it was just hard. It was just like, it's hard to be on. I like to do like a lot of Instagram stories and stuff, and it's hard for me to act excited when you're not, and I try to be honest, but you don't want to be too honest. And then it's, a lot of people are surprised. I have a full-time job. We get up at 4:15 in the morning. It's a long day, and it's hard to get going sometimes. And like Kimmy says, I have a small shop. Thank God I just moved all my welding stuff out. That's been a blessing. But you get on there's shit over everything, and I just got rid of a big CNC I had, which was great to load up with more craft. So thank God I got a second one so I could CNC stuff on that one. But it's hard, it's just, you got family stuff, the house suppers, my wife does a lot. And it's like that saying, like the cobbler, his kids always showed it because his shoes. I worked with the old Carolina so I could get some shoes, but no, it's hard. It's nonstop. She'll tell you every night I come home from work, I'm at the counter, I'm on my computer. They think I'm on YouTube all the time. Sometimes I sneak on it, but it's just, it's editing something, downloading something, calling Jimmy, hounding him about something. And if it's not doing that, it's in the shock. And I always look at the editing card. It's like the biggest monkey on my back. And it's hard for me to remember that's part of the process. Yeah. I'm more like an execution guy. Just tell me what to do and I can do it. But that's part of the whole thing too. So I have a hard time getting behind that, for me.
So the way Derek put that is the way I heard almost everyone describe like the real inside view of what it's like to be a maker. I know it's my life, like sometimes like things are going sideways at home, or you're not getting along, or you're not feeling well, and you just don't feel inspired. Yeah, you have this deadline, you're supposed to be making this thing, and the internet makes it look so glamorous, right? These cut scenes to the videos, man, everything's hunky-dory all the time. But the truth is, all of us are like he described, I think, to some extent. And I'll give you another example. I think a lot of you know Keith Johnson, KG Sawdust, is one of my close personal friends. He's an amazing furniture maker and YouTube content creator, right? His videos are fabulous. But lately, and I'm totally airing his dirty laundry, little does he know, he's been struggling in a way because he's getting so good at making furniture, and he wants to push himself further on every project, that it's getting to the point that the projects are taking so long to satisfy himself, and they're so detailed that he can't get the videos out, in a quick way for sponsors. And, there's a timeline to getting videos out, but yet he's only fulfilled when he's really pushing himself creatively and as a maker. So he's caught in this tension between God, I just don't want to mail it in. I really want to go after that project, but yet it's at odds with like getting projects out quickly. So I think that's another example of like, what do? You know, you want to be better as a maker, but you have a job at the same time. How you navigate that tension. And part of the way he navigates, like one of the solutions is to work with friends. So you'll probably notice he collaborates for me a lot. And that's because we both have so much more fun working together than always doing it alone, right? You're in your shop again alone. Here I am, okay? But to like be able to call your friend every day and bitch about something that didn't work or talk about this creative process, and it just makes it so much more fun and so much more rich with ideas. So I think that's another, collaboration is a great way to handle, I think, the doldrums of
You triggered some thoughts, not exactly on that topic, but just sitting here thinking, there are times when I'm in between projects, or I have to start something that I don't want to, and I haven't really zeroed in on it yet. I don't know how to begin, or I don't know how to middle, I don't know how to end it. I'll start cleaning the shop. There's always time. My shop's always needs to be cleaned, right? Yeah, so I'll always clean the shop. That's always an opportunity for me to put things away, reorganize to some extent, rearrange, and the process of rearranging and cleaning, I'll find that spring I found in the street walking in the middle of the night the other night, a car spring, and I'll be like, oh, you know what? Maybe I could make a whittling knife. I'll break off the last piece, blacksmith it, and then the video will be about me making the knife and whittling a spoon. So I see an arc. Yeah. That I wouldn't have touched the spring. So that's, for me, is another good trigger, is to start cleaning. Or just organize the yard. I mean, Rich knows if I'm not doing it, what am I doing? I'm organizing the yard. I'm moving all the garbage from here to over there. Putting it behind the tall weeds, cleaning the weeds that are where they should be. So that helps.
Similarly, my usual co-host on the show, which is Eric Curtis, he's been on the show. We conceived of it together when we were stuff. He's on every show. He's out of light today. He couldn't be here, but he likes to take a walk around Philadelphia. He just walks.
I walk every night.
He looks around him, and he just sees things that just trigger ideas, which I think is a great. I, on the other hand, I don't necessarily find it when I'm walking, but I do like to go to museums, and holy shit. When I leave that museum, I have about 10,000 new ideas. And I don't mean museums for woodworking. I mean, I am looking at other forms of art. It's the other forms of art that really stimulate a lot of, how can I bring that idea back into a woodworking lexicon? So I love, the MFA we have in Boston, it's like world class. You leave that place, there is no shortage of inspiration. So I think there's ways to conjure up ideas.
And I'm gonna point at you. That's the type of thing you need to do more often. Is when you're out of ideas, I'll call people talking to me. I gotta do this thing. I don't want to do it. So I said, go look for inspiration. Even if it's just a Google search.
In front of everybody.
No. No, I mean, and the reason I pick on you is because I got to see you go from just a guy that hides in his basement making stuff to now the world sees what you're doing. Yeah, now you're a big Netflix star, and you went from making a side table once every few months to now you feel you need to produce because everyone's looking, and you have to produce, and sometimes you have no ideas. Yeah. And I think you have ideas, but you have this sort of crutch block. You're like, I have no ideas. I'm like, you should do it. You do. You'd say goodbye.
I'll send you on my phone, but I just.
You never look.
Yeah, no, you're right.
You look for that one that's going to strike you and get you at the table, versus the one you got to go search for them.
Thank you.
Mic drop.
Justine. No, it was tough because I have a smaller YouTube presence, but sometimes I felt like I was like dumbing down my projects because the editing is so daunting to me. Like, editing's not my strong suit. I mean, I'm getting better, but sometimes going to my studio, if I don't have a job that I'm looking for a client or whatever, I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Why would I make this? What's the point? But I think for me, sometimes like the act of playing and allowing myself to play, like I'm just gonna break out this clay that I got for no reason, but other than the fact that I like making stuff. And then that kind of reminds me like, oh, wait a minute. I do like doing this. Like, maybe I should do more of it. And so even if it's something really silly, like making a sign, I don't know, for your garden or whatever it is, it kind of cues that within my brain at least, like, oh, A, you're good at it, and B, you like doing it. Like, just because that one, you were at the sub portion of the last project, You just gotta remind yourself again. And sometimes playing helps.
I have a hard time. We've been married almost 30 years. Our house is packed with more shit than we need. So it's like, I'm not going to build another coffee table. You know, we don't need one. So it's hard to find things I need. And then it's like, you know, then I got to find something to sell. But like this past week, I made a mirror for my daughter. Her birthday was yesterday. I haven't really showed much about it. And it's this guy on Instagram. I'm not going to say his name, so I'll butcher it. But I think actually Keith Decent can be turned on to this guy. He makes stuff. He's somewhere in Europe, Eastern Europe somewhere. And he makes stuff out of trash. He makes the most amazing stuff. And he inspired me to he takes a lot of bicycle chain. And doesn't even make mirrors out of round mirrors. He'll take scraps of broken mirror he finds and he'll make them. And they're beautiful. He makes picture frames. So we've talked back and forth. And Dave Gagne, a friend of ours who passed away a year ago, maybe, I don't know, I can't even think about it. But I got some bicycle chain from him, I thought 2 years ago, but it was before my oldest daughter was in college, so it's about 8 years ago. And I made a letter D, and like literally 2 days later, he got killed in a motorcycle crash. And he was always like, just make something with this shit. Don't let it just go to waste, you know? And so I made this mirror, and I'm like, I don't know, you know, my wife, she can be my easiest critic or my worst critic, you know? Like sometimes she'll look at stuff and she's like, I don't get it. She's like, oh no, that's really nice. And then at my daughter, I love her, but she can be a pain in the ass. So I'm kind of and she was just like, Dad, it's amazing. And not to bring it down, but I just feel like someday I'm going to be gone. And I want to make stuff for my kids. They'll be like, oh, your grandfather made that. I know my dad made that. My son, he hasn't got too much yet, but I got to work on this stuff in him. But it's just nice to make something a little bit different and not necessarily for us that someday they'll get to enjoy. So,
Derek, you don't have to worry about taking this podcast down. We did an episode on death and legacy, which opened with, so you all know you're going to die, right? So what do you want to make before you get there? So don't worry about taking it down. There's no ground we don't cover. Speaking of which, let's pivot topics now to our second of the three greatest hits that we're going to cover today. Imposter syndrome. Oh, like it, bro. Perfect. Well, our third co-host, Mary, she's very analytical, and she always used to like to define things. Like, what do you mean by imposter syndrome, Paul? What do you mean? Can you define imposter syndrome? So, the definition, as far as the Oxford English Dictionary, is the persistent inability to believe that someone's success is deserved or has been achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. I'll repeat. Imposter syndrome, the persistent inability to believe that someone's success is deserved or has been achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. So the first question I had, thinking about imposter syndrome as a larger topic, is what percent of the population identifies with that? And I have a percent, and I usually have my co-host guess what the percent is. So I'll have them guess first, and then you're going to raise your hand, and we'll compare their sense that they're guessing of the population who's dealt with imposter syndrome to the approximate percent of hand raises, and that'll tell you what the research shows. So Jimmy?
90%.
Okay. Derek?
70.
I was going to go 70.
70. Raise the hands. How many of you have felt in a moment of like that feeling of imposter syndrome? I'm not sure. Oh, I'm glad to do this. Oh, it's pretty close to 80%. Yeah, 70, 80, 90%.
What do I want?
No. You're not an imposter. Congratulations. The research shows it's about up to 80%. Do you think it falls down gender lines?
I would say maybe.
Yeah, maybe a little.
Okay, which way? Justine?
Oh, well, I was going to say women are second. Well, at least some of them, I don't know, the maker space feels very male topic.
Okay. She's 100% right. Now, the research is a little mixed on whether it's men and women. Some studies, depending on which population you look at, say it's like roughly equal. But a more recent study shows it's more women than men. Not a lot more. It's plenty of men. So there are a lot of hands out here that were not women. But yeah, typically women more than men. And my question about that, is it because women are more forthcoming about their feelings? So maybe the men being interviewed have felt it and they don't want to admit it. So I don't know, there could be a bias in the sampling, you never know, because men aren't quite as forthcoming about their feelings. But yes, as far as we know, it's women, especially when a woman is in a male-dominated field. Exactly what you said. That is exactly what the research literature shows. Because, there's a lot of inertia as a woman in a male-dominated field, right? And not all that inertia is good. I mean, this crowd is especially welcoming and warm. And, I feel like this is a highly select subpopulation, which I'm, proud to be here. But in general, I think it's tough to be in a dominated field. So I'd like us to take a turn. Remember a time when you felt that feeling. When you felt it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It could have just been a moment, and explain what that felt like. So, Justine, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that the maker community is the most supportive group of people I have ever come in contact with. That's where I feel very fortunate to be part of it. But there have been times when I've been aggressively explained to what a crack jig is on site, and I'm like, and
To make poppables. Oh, dear.
And so sometimes when you have that voice in the back of your head that's already telling you, they don't know how to do that, which I think we all experience, and then having somebody else come in and step in and say, do you know how to use that drill, is like, oh, maybe I don't, even though I know I do. And so that's something that I definitely experience alone. And like I said, I think everybody does, but sometimes when you get that outside validation to something that's already in your head, and I think that can happen whether you're a woman or a man working on a site, but, maybe that's kind of where that comes from.
Derek?
Well, what was the question? No. Imposter syndrome, I tell you, it's something I deal with all the time. It's just, once, like Jimmy said, I was just the guy making stuff in my basement. I've always made stuff. A lot of it just to get away mentally and just like my own little quiet space. And then when the show come out, people just, thought you're this amazing person. And I'm just I'm just the guy sitting in my basement. It was in the right place at the right time. I'm nobody different, And it just I just remember one time me and Jimmy were talking bullshit, taxes, money, and he's like, oh, I just put on my tax return, I'm an artist. And I was like, whoa. I mean? And I would just, I think I've called myself an artist once, and maybe it was just for myself, but I've never felt that way. I just felt like a guy that's interested in stuff and likes to make stuff and create stuff, and once in a while I get it right. But I don't know. I'm not an artist.
Derek, I also really struggled with calling myself an artist too, and I know how. But I for a long time, even though I went to art school, I did the thing, and I was like, well, no, I'm not an artist. I'm just building this thing. Yeah. But then I think especially when I'm around people who are like-minded and doing the things that I'm doing, I'm like, oh no, I can be with you guys. Maybe I am an artist. Now I'll kind of kick that imposter syndrome a little.
I would say you both artists. The beans angry. For me. I said when I went on my podcast with Bob and Dave, I once said, it's okay to call yourself an artist. And that was the one time I think I got the most heartfelt messages from the audience. Where I said, it's okay to call yourself an artist. It's not, some people grow up in a family and they're expected to be a finance something or a banker or an insurance salesman. But what they really want to be is an artist. And it's always just pushed down with that. And like I said, I got several messages of people saying that really hit home. That it's okay to be an artist. Just simply to say it's okay to be an artist. As far as imposter syndrome comes with me, there are moments in time. I obviously been doing this so long, but I still do experience it when I try something for the first time. And then when you first sent me that message the other day, I looked at it, I was like, the first time I played with clay. And still, when I play with clay and pottery, it's always kind of a joke. My brother John always says, what is this, craft time at the rehab? I'm like,
Come here, old man. It's time to take your pills.
craft time at the rehab. My brother says it all the time. But playing with the clay is such an intensely it's scientific. You're a scientist, so you know the chemistry of the glaze and the clay itself and the heat and the length and the bringing the temperature down. There's so much to it. And I'm in there like, clay. Can we go make something on clay? And it's such a primitive, it is like one of the first artisan things, I assume, that cave paintings and clay and chipping rock or they call it dapping when you make an arrowhead. Making things out of clay, to me, I remember I made a soap pitch and went, that was one of the first video that I made with clay. And I still have it. It's my soap dish. It's the one that's always got the Marie soap in it. Yeah, the one that makes it. So anyway, so I feel like an imposter when I play with clay, which every year I'm like, this is the year I'm going to delve into clay and learn more scientific stuff about it. And anytime I'm with somebody that I know is an advanced potter, I'm always like, how long do you with your first 5? And then how long do you let it dry? Like I'm always asking these like questions to me that are blocks. But it's like that with other stuff too. You know, when I hang out with Dave Wade, DTB Fat Wade, Dave knows so much about so many things that when I'm in his vicinity, I'm asking him dumb questions like, how do I take the hull off of a Chevy truck? Which we had mentioned about the other day.
They got no guy out on that bit.
Yeah, and then he like sends me pages out of the manual. Like, of course I could do that, but I don't think like. But no, the sockets on the gas tank for the Cadillac. Dave did that, and I watched how we did it. You know, so a lot of times I swallow my pride when it's Imposter Syndrome and look at somebody that's better at it than me. You know, you always want me in the room of smarter people, and that's how we all learn. You know, it's an old thing. You don't want to be the smartest person in a room, which we've all heard 100 times. If you ever you've ever been in a room where you're the smartest person, and you're like, get the hell out of here. Ow.
That's a great answer for us to hear, I think, because Jimmy, being the maker he is, and thinking for the length of time, diversity of objects, if he feels that way, well, that normalizes it in essence. Like, if he feels like an imposter occasionally, who wouldn't? Right?
Another time, I like when Stuff Make Here started putting out videos, I was like, I should just throw my camera in the toilet. You guys know who that is? This kid hidden in his scientific brain. Like, I'm going to do like a never missed pool kill. And then he's like, talks about it because it's like some nerd has been and makes the most amazing thing you've ever seen. And it goes through the trials and tribulations.
So for me, the most recent moment, I felt that imposter syndrome sneak in. I was teaching a class at Pratt Institute out in Seattle. And I was the master in residence, for this class, which the word master, kind of icks me out. But so I came to this class and I decided to do something unusual. It wasn't going to be like, come in, we're going to build this box. I said, come in with any idea you want for a box and we'll build it. So I had no idea what they were bringing me. I had no clue what these ideas would come at. I didn't know if we had enough time. I didn't know if I'd have the expertise. I had no idea what they were going to ask me to build. And they show up, and there we are, and we start talking through the ideas, and just while we're talking through, I almost zoomed out like a drone on my own body, looking down on the situation from the sky, thinking what if I can't come up with a good way to make the thing that they just paid a lot of money for this entire week? What if I can't pull it off? And that it hit me. In that moment, because I realized I wasn't just speaking to them. They were telling me, oh, and then I want this, and then I would like to do this, and I was kind of I wasn't listening. You're gonna have to repeat that. I totally zoomed out. But I realized, okay, calm down. You don't have to know everything. We'll take, you'll get your best crack at it, and what happens will be what happens. And as long as they learn a lot, that'll be. And long story short, the class went great. The boxes they wanted to make were almost all finished. One was about 70%, but at least we got 70% of the way there. And it just taught me, don't panic in those moments. But you never, ever really feel fully prepared. I had been woodworking almost 20 years at that time. I'd made hundreds of boxes. And what the hell is that fog doing in my head? After all those experiences, why am I thinking like that? It's but it's just how you feel. And they're like, oh, no, fog, you're a master. And I'm like, all I know is the last project worked out okay? I don't know about the next one. I'll give it my best, but there's no guarantees.
Yeah, that's relatable as a teacher. I taught the School of Visual Arts for 23, 24 years. And I totally get that. Like, they're all here looking at me. Day one of class, they're all like, okay, teach us. You know, the ones that aren't looking at their phone, like, no, it's don't.
Yeah. So if you feel like speaking in, I think the message is, well, we all feel that way sometimes, and probably a lot more than you realize, or a lot more than most of us care to have been. But now this is a safe space, so I think we're all going to admit it later when we have beers. We're all going to be talking at the get-together. We're like, so when was the last time you felt like an imposter? I want you to say that to someone tonight.
By the way, this box with the skull on it, Paul made that. So. Or many of you might not know. That's the type of quality work that Paul produces.
He makes amazing stuff. I've been a fan of Paul's for a long time, and it's funny. I said to him one time, he gets so excited. If you look through his Instagram from way, way back, the brush of it, he masters like the smallest little details, then he'll put it in a project, then he builds that onto another project, and they're all like building blocks. And I was like, this guy, you were chowing up, we look pretty close to each other for Instagram for a long time. And he's like, oh yeah, our PhD, and I was like, you're not a woodworker? I was like so shocked, like he was so talented. But he's like, he's a great guy.
This is so hard to listen to, but
He's just been a great friend to have and a true inspiration.
and the reason I asked Paul on stage today, I invited you to do this with Curtis, but he's obviously not here. But because I listened to a few of their episodes and the few conversations we had in person, you're very deep. You're like, look past the surface. And that probably has a lot to do with your research work and obviously your quality of work. So thanks for
Thank you, guys. All right, so let's get into our third topic, which I think is related to imposter syndrome, which is perfectionism. I think for people who have perfectionistic tendencies, it tends to co-present with imposter syndrome, right? Makes sense. If you think everything needs to be literally perfect, how can you ever not feel like an imposter? Because none of us reach perfection, right? So I think this is a related but separate issue. And I would like to talk a bit about perfectionism. I have another definition of perfectionism, defined as setting excessively high standards of self-expression, accompanied by excessively critical self-evaluation. So, yeah, all right, let's do the raise of hand. Now that we're all in the trust and we're all in the safe circle, let's raise hand. How many people feel like you have dealt with or have perfectionism tendencies? Okay, next question. I think perfectionism can cut two ways. I think in one way, it holds us back. We procrastinate on starting because it's not going to be good enough. The plan's not fleshed out enough. I haven't prepared enough, right? Or it could cut the other way. It actually elevates my work to a higher standard than if I wasn't that way, right? It's a positive view. It's not always negative. I think the gut response to perfectionism says it's a negative thing, but it doesn't always have to be. It does raise the bar personally within yourself. And there's this tension between it disrupting your life or kind of pushing you forward. And so I think that's a very interesting tension. And I think we probably oscillate to some degree between like, it's a helpful trait, oh, I went a little too far, and it probably changes during the course of your life. So I would say, I'd like to hear from everyone. Do you think you are a perfectionist, and in what way, and has it been positive or negative for you? And Derek, why don't you start this time?
It's been both. So as much as I complain to my wife, boy, Jimmy gets it on the other end, numerous pitches and, I'll make something. I was doing a lot of signs and I'll bring it up, and sometimes I'll try to trick my wife. I won't show her, and I'll be like, what do you think of this? And she's like, oh, it's great. What's that little dot? Oh, she's seeing it, I gotta do it over. And I jokingly say I charge 3 times the amount because I usually make it about 3 times, yeah. But, Jimmy's always like, I don't give a shit. Nobody's gonna see it. Only you see it. But it will drive me crazy. And, sometimes it pays off. I did a sign for a guy, and sometimes I'll start a second one before I'm even done because I know it's gonna go sell. And so I had 2 signs this guy made, and luckily, like 3 months later, he called me. He says, hey, can you make me a second one? I said, absolutely, and it was already done. So, but it's just, somebody had said it was perfect, it wouldn't look handmade. And I try to remember that sometimes, and I try to remember sometimes the things I see nobody else will see, but it's so difficult because for me, like a little speck of something looks like a crayon. And it drives me crazy.
So you drives her crazy. So you force yourself to redo it.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if I lose money, I've lost money on a lot of projects. I made a beautiful old oak farmhouse table for a woman, and I think it cost me about $400 or $500 to make it for her. But in the end, it was going to be perfect, and it was going to be done the way she wanted it done. And it killed me to do it, but it is what it is.
So Derek, is the perfectionism you experience a net negative or a net positive, would you say?
I think both. I think sometimes it's positive because it makes me want to do better than, I see a lot of stuff people do and I say, that looks like shit. I'd be embarrassed to put my name on that. But seriously, I think a lot of people rush to do stuff just to make a buck, and, for me, it's like I would just be embarrassed to have my name associated with it. But on the other hand, I think a lot of times, I literally have in my shop things I've ruined or didn't know about. I try to stick them all over my shop so I remember, oh yeah, I remember screwing that up, I remember screwing this up, and I try to learn from it, the painting thing was just, it's hard, I don't have a spray booth, I'm painting outside, sometimes in my basement, then, epoxy, there's dust foam from the ceiling and people walk by, and, it's not easy, but it's, I just like stuff to look nice. The finance gonna be on it. So,
Jimmy, what do you say?
I don't care. No. I'm not quite as a perfectionist. It all depends. I've obviously been commissioned many times in my life to make things directly for, not to name drop. Who's the guy on the phone?
It's not name dropping if you don't remember their name.
He always dates young girls. He was in
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Leonardo DiCaprio. I actually, Leonardo DiCaprio's apartment. That's a true story. I remember Leo was, it was in the summer of 2009, and the interior designer I was working for got to do one of the sample apartments, all the model apartments, and one of the guys from Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, the interior guy, did the apartment right next to ours. So he was doing his, Tom Felicia was doing his apartment, and me and Amanda and a few people were doing Amanda's apartment. And Leo came in and he picked Amanda's apartment. He was like, I like this, let's just do my apartment just like that. And now it's up to me to fabricate a lot of the stuff. And the good thing is, Amanda cornered me and she's like, look, don't overcharge him because he's a celebrity. She's like, I'm pushing him on certain things, and he really doesn't care. She's like, if we push him too hard, he'll just go to IKEA. He's not that uptight. And I said, okay, so we came up with medium pricing for everything. But there he is, I gotta make sure everything's right. I gotta make sure everything's perfect. I gotta use quality materials. And in the end, he liked everything. I mean, I didn't get any complaints. And we got called back several times that year to do other things around the house. But there are times when I'm working on stuff for TV. How many times did I tell you on the show? Don't worry about it. Nobody's gonna see it. And Justine knows that as well as anybody.
Yeah,
Nobody can see it.
Jimmy, that I've heard you say that to me before, right? You've mentioned this before. Like it's good enough for film, or it's good enough for a photo. Like, how do you? I have trouble with that. How do you square that with your own compass of I always want to give my best. Like, how do you find agreement with yourself?
Well, it's a good question. Where, for instance, I just did the big Cadillac build, the 5 Series on the Cadillac build, which I'm not done with, but for all intents and purposes, I built a car, but it needs windows and seat covers. Those are upcoming videos. But when I was working on that, I knew it was going to be a spectacle. I knew it was going to be scrutinized, but I'm hiding behind, it's a wrap rod. which means it doesn't expect perfection, but it expects quirkiness. And so when I did all my woodwork, there were certain things that I had to make sure, like the curve of the body. It had to look sexy from every angle. So I had to do and make sure that there were certain curves that matched what would have been the original car, which I don't know what it looks like other than just photographs. I never experienced it in person, but I projected that curve off of those two doors that existed, and I wanted to make sure that if this car was a real car, or if it's a real manufactured wooden car, this had to have to project off that curve and land in the back in the right spot. So I was very particular about the curves on a car. When it got to being how I assembled it, I was kind of shooting in the dark. I was just like, this looks good, that looks good. But at the end of the day, I knew I could always go back and fix stuff. And so that's a lot of times how I square things.
So it's almost like an open book. I can go back if I want to.
I can go so back. Okay. But when it's a client job, obviously I can't go back and be like, hey, remember I built that cabinet? I think I want to change the hinges. Get the hell out of here. Well, when it's something that's in my own turf, in my own environment, I can always go back and change it or fix it or adjust it or do a video on revisiting, which I don't do that much. I mean, I might do it for Patreons or whatever. But when it comes to perfection with fonts and porch bowls and cars and stuff, I like to just do the whole thing, step back, and then look what's grabbing my eye, and be like, that's where I messed up. I really have to revisit that section, or compromise something. Right. It's like no way I can go back, like on the porch poles.
Yeah.
You have to make a compromise you're okay with.
So you bring up two important points, I think, from like a zooming out point of view, which is revise and iterate. Like step back, revise, iterate. It doesn't have to be perfect at first to go around. I always say, like, if you're feeling tight about yourself on this project, do yourself a favor. Call it version 1.
Yes, I always say, my students should show me a book. They would show me a book, like the book by one. Let's grim it. I go make it again. They're like, oh, it took me all day to make this one. I'm like, do you want to make things for a living? Or do you want to just go through life saying I made one of it?
And while you make the one, all the new ideas, how you could make it better. I know all y'all do this.
They come and go.
They come while you're working, right? Opportunity, like inspiration comes, but your hands have to be working usually. So just park that for V2. Don't make V1 so precious you never finish it. And that's helped me a lot. And also think of that project like a diary entry. That is who you are now. That is this year's version of you. Like that's not next year's version of you. That was the diary entry for 2025. Complete it, love it, live with it. And then if you are so inclined, revisit it next year or the year after. And you'll see, you could step back and say, wow, I've come a long way. And it's a learning moment with you and yourself. It's like reputation, confidence is sort of like tied to your own reputation with yourself. And you need these moments to kind of look back and say, wow, that's how I started. No judgment. I'm not going to judge myself. That's who I was then. That's the maker I was then. And here's where I am now. That's still awesome. Look at the growth, right? It's a great it's a great tool to help yourself finish projects and not be tied down with like perfectionist. It's not going to be good enough. You don't finish it, right? I think we know we won't finish projects if we get hung up like that.
Well, with the leather is an opportunity where I'll be making some in leather for 2 hours, and then all of a sudden, one slip of the tool, I'm like, oh, that's going to my sister for free. But I finish it anyway. And then I'm like, oh, that's a nice dollar for a friend that just pops in the shop. Yeah.
The workmanship of risk, as they say.
And that's just the way it is. But I think, I always say you go to school now. I went to college. I took a college education on this particular project. But something I want to bring up, which I say a lot, is the thing we all do as artists. We see the vision of the object we're making, if it's a creation that nobody's ever seen before, something of our own design, and we think, this has to go like this. And then we struggle with a mistake. Now we have to compromise our mistake, or we have to compromise a decision or access to a material. And then when we're making a compromise, we think everybody knows. It's the first thing, you're like, look at this music stand I made. I really wanted to do this, but I ran out of the screws, but this is okay. If I didn't say that, you would go, this is a beautiful music stand.
That brings up a great point. When you show people the things you make,
You point out all the
do not start with apologies or pointing out the imperfections. Please don't do that. We all do it. I've done it. I'm guilty.
But no, those compromises that nobody knows except for you, but the minute you reveal a project to a client or somebody, you're like, I didn't really want these, but that's all I could get, Amazon delivered next week, you wanted this week. And so we would just go, the door opens, it's great.
Yeah, but honestly, it ruins the moment for the recipient. It really does. Because in their eyes, it's so magical. This moment, they're seeing it for the first time, let's say. And it's so magical, they're just taking it in, right? They're drinking in this object. It's beautiful, and to them, it's amazing. And you're gonna like chop that moment in half. We're like, I didn't have the right pages. It would have been a lot nicer. And suddenly, like all that good juju they were feeling is like totally out the window. Like, don't do that. All right, Justine, are you a perfectionist?
Yeah, and I think I need like a tattoo on my forehead that says "Done is better than perfect."
Yeah.
I had this timestamp for a podcast saved on my desktop from a long time ago. It was the one from My Favorite Murder talking, and they were talking about, well, what is a perfectionist? And the other one was like, I'm not. And the one was a perfectionist. Is like, well, I shoot for A+. And the other one was like, I shoot for B- and know that the A+ people will never turn that paper in. And then my B+ becomes an A+. And I remember being like, okay, so instead of sitting on an idea for a year and a half, which I have been doing for many ideas, just doing it and putting it out there, even if it's B+ work, may become a little bit scaled in the grading system if I do it, because the A+ people aren't going to put theirs out in the first place. And so I definitely had trouble with that on the front end of projects, perfectionism, in the getting started place of like, well, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I don't have whatever. But then if I do get a project started on the end, sometimes perfectionism can pay off a little bit, because if I do get my project done, even though it's not exactly what I thought it was in the sketch phase, I can usually make it look pretty good, just because my perfectionism eye lends itself sometimes to projects like that.
So you bring up an interesting point, which is the beginning of the project, the middle of the project, and the end of the project, right? Perfectionism cuts differently at those three stages. At the beginning of the project, well, you just procrastinate, you don't start. You feel like, it's not going to be good enough. The idea is not good enough. I didn't plan enough. Or like you were saying, like just, you were just sort of learn to just get going, right? So perfectionism can stall us, and I want you three to react to like E3. Let me just put the framework in and you react. So at the beginning of the project, it tends to stall us out. Then there's perfectionism during the project. Every step you go, it's good. Let's say your project is 100 steps big, right? And you're on step 10 or step 12, and things go sideways again. Fuck. Now what? It's ruined. I don't even want to. You just set it aside, right? How do you not let, like you're already 10, 50 steps in, and it starts to get precious. You start to get scared because you don't want to ruin it. Like you've done so good for so long. How'd you get so far? You don't want to screw it up now, right? And then you get precious. You get scared to like take a risk. And so perfectionism is like there with you during the whole middle of the project. It's helping you in some regards, but it's also making you feel nervous, scared. And then there's perfectionism on the end of the project. Is it a B+ or is it an A+? Is that going to influence the price I sell it for? Is that going to influence my sales and marketing of it? How I view the pictures, how I take the pictures, how I talk about it? Because I know I don't really like it, or it's got these problems. So I feel like it can cut us like at every step of the project, and you can see what the outcomes are, especially at the end, pricing. That's a tough one. Our favorite topic as a group is like, how do you price your work? All of us are like, ugh. The minute you ask them how do you price your work, they're like, ugh. Like no one wants to answer it because they don't really.
You can have it for free. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So so there's this framework. Like it can come in at any point. Any thoughts from you three about like when it comes into play for you in the process?
I like it, yeah. Once in a while when you're making a project, then suddenly the project intimidates you for sure. Wow, I can't believe I did that. And then it's true, there's a responsibility to make sure you don't screw it up then. Because you've Instagrammed it, you've showed it around, and then you could blow it up by accident, or it'll explode on the lathe or whatever it is. But I always got to remind myself, I tell my students this, you are the God in the world of this object. If you think of like in the little encompassing little universe, this object didn't exist until you as the God of this object created it.
awesome.
So you could destroy it and you could make it again.
That's awesome.
So I think of that. And I,
What a
so,
great way to think about a law.
so that's how I keep them intimidated myself. Every once in 500 years, I work with someone I really get intimidated by.
That's fantastic.
Okay.
Anything else? Yeah, that's really good. I know. How do you top it up?
No, I actually was just going through that with this go-kart bill. I started this thing and I started with the go-kart and it was just getting to be a lot, and once again over to Dave Doherty, he made everything all better. But then I have a
Grades
goal.
not love.
Garrett's bad about his days out.
Yeah, exactly. He does spot points too. But anyway, no, then it was like, okay, so I got the go-kart going. Then I went down to Baltimore and I was building the boot. It was all 3D printed. And like the big joke was it was really easy when Jimmy was killing himself in Jackman, and it was so much work. And I was just like, I thought this was gonna be like a 1-2 day process. I was there 4 or 5 days, I think. Then it was like, now it's gotta be painted. So then it's back painting it. Now it's gonna be attached to the go-kart. Now it's all gonna work together. It was so overwhelming every step of the way. It came out great, I felt, but it just was like each step was just exhausting. And he was like, am I gonna get this done? And I literally got it done the day of up at your place. We finished it up. And it was a lot, you know,
The details are the most
yeah.
daunting part of any project, the details. Yeah, you make beautiful doors, but then you ruin everything by putting the hinges on. Not you, me.
Oh, me. Not too. Yeah.
It's getting that hinge alignment it's like, I don't even want to make a box for the door.
Well, you know,
because I know eventually I have to put a hinge on.
One of my friends like to say, it's just wood. He'd always say, it's just wood. And I just repeat that to myself when it's feeling particularly precious, and it's just wood. I can always make it again.
It was funny building this. It's like I get in the go-kart and it was really swish, and Davis, he's so talented. I mean, he's talking about it, but he's like, why don't we just cut out the seat pan and we'll make a new one? I'm like, I gotta get this to New York tomorrow. Like, he's cutting out seat pans and then he's extending the front end, and then it was one thing after another, but if it wasn't for him, it wouldn't have got done. But it's just, yeah, it's just every step of the way, just doubting it.
Dick, get up here. Derek goes.
Yeah. You too.
All right, y'all. Well, that was our greatest hits of Woodworking is Bullshit. Some of those questions come from 3 of our episodes. There's about 44 episodes. Some of them are really vulnerable and emotional. Justin's peering at you from the front row, just to a back-to-back episode of what it's like to be a storyteller and the importance of story, why that makes objects special, and people in our lives special. So there's a whole log of about 44 episodes of pretty heady topics, because that's what we like to talk about. So you can always feel free to check it out. And I want to thank Jimmy and Derek and Justine for being so colorful.
On my part, tonight, as we get to know each other better,
Y'all think back, or when you're in your shop, you'll think back to this chat, that you're not alone. We all feel that way, and we should probably talk about it more. Thanks.
Thank you.